All right, so this time I hit record. Welcome. So I have my good friend Danny Benites. He is the Chief Operating Officer at ZipDeal. Really happy to have him join me today to talk about the DealerKnows Summer Camp. Danny, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Name's Danny Benites, and up until about 3 years ago, spent the previous 35 years inside the walls of automotive retail. Actually started out washing cars during high school summers, went off to school at Texas Tech, and then when I came back, started selling. And from that point forward, just really tried to work my way up through the dealership ranks. And I got to work just practically every position inside the automotive retail space. Even worked a couple of them for free because I needed to put that on my resume. With my ultimate goal is I wanted to be a general manager and a dealer someday. So I worked through that and tried to find the people with either the nicer cars or watches or shoes as I went through. Actually, I don't know that I was particularly great at any of those positions. I'm not one of those people who say, well, I sold 40 or 50 cars a month. I didn't. I was average and at best a little above average selling cars. But I was always focused in trying to learn more. I'm curious by nature, and I just couldn't be in that setting and looking at the finance office or the sales desk and wondering, how do they do what they do? Why are they in that position? What skills do I need to attain that? I'm a driven person. I'm always looking to move forward and get better and learn more. And so the natural progression there was to go through different places, and I wanted to spend a decent amount of time at each space. So, and I did. So I spent several years behind the desk, several years as a finance director. I spent time in fixed as a parts manager, service manager, less time than I did in the sales, but I wanted to be able to accumulate all those tools and some of that knowledge so that I would be, just a better general manager or dealer when I eventually got there. So I was able to do that. I was blessed to work into a general manager role, was able to partner with some people for a minute. We owned some stores. And then since that point, for the last 3 years, I've moved over to a different part of my life, software, and we've created ZipDeal, which is an incredible product. I wouldn't have made the move this side if it wasn't something that's truly unique that I'm really, really proud of, that really does at the end of the day help. So that's what I do now. But I'm not a software guy, I'm a car guy, and have kind of been through a lot of different things and been able to learn through the last 10 or 12 years from an industry standpoint, getting to speak at conferences and write for some different publications. I've been able to meet people like you and really smart people. And so I don't know if I'm smart myself, but man, I know a lot of smart people, and I have a lot of smart people in my network, you included. So that's kind of my story. And now I'm a vendor, a software guy, and a process guy. So that's the story.
Well, and I got to tell you that Danny is going to be one of our camp counselors, and just for those reasons, because of that breadth of experience. One thing that we think is going to be really unique about this conference, besides being outdoors and not being in a convention center, is having this ability to have somebody with like Danny's experience to help lead you through the process. And I've relied on Danny over the years. Like I said, I think sometimes being a smart person is knowing when you don't know everything, and there are other smarter people, at least in certain things that
I must be really smart then.
You're really smart that way. So, but I've relied on Danny for years, for that type of stuff and just that perspective. And one of the things that, we've talked about over the years is just the idea of like, you go to these conferences, and it's not to besmirch the conferences, but a lot of times you're learning from somebody who is like the number one in their metro all the time, or they're part of some publicly traded conglomerate. And that's not representative of most dealerships. And I really appreciate that he has that there. And I really appreciate him kind of being vulnerable, saying he wasn't that like, oh, I sold 30 cars a month. Like we hear from so many people all the time. And I love that perspective. I remember, Danny, when I was at my dealership, I was in a town of like 8,000 people selling exclusively online. This is, 20 years ago, whatever. But I didn't have those gaudy volume numbers either until I switched to another program when I got on the tech side, and I sold 11 cars in 5 days. And I was just like, that was still me. 2 weeks before that, I was still the small town guy, and I go to a different market and like, boom, so it's a relative scale. But I also think I love hearing that, because that probably makes you a better manager. In my experience, like having the most volume doesn't always make you the best manager.
Yeah.
So I think
It's like being on the on deck circle. You swing you swing a weighted bat.
Mhm.
And so I really spent my whole career working at average to below average volume stores. So I've never had the advantage of working at a really, really high volume store. But I think in some cases through my consulting business, I found what I like to call victims of volume. They do so much volume that sometimes your muscles atrophy,
Mhm.
become complacent, and the absolute natural flow of customers coming in allows you to form bad habits and what have you. So I'm really thankful to have been in different kind of volume stores, some rural areas, things like that. So, I wore different hats, and anytime you make a mistake or a misstep, it's magnified because
Mhm.
you can't cover it up with a bunch of volume and all these other things. And so it's helped me condition those muscles, so to speak, those management muscles, to where we're able to really concentrate on all the things that make us effective. And so I'm really thankful for that, because I've got to feel deeply all of those things. And I think it's made me a little more well-rounded. And you're right. I was not the best salesperson. I wasn't really the best at any of those positions, but I just always had the thirst to learn more and find out how I could be better and surround myself with really smart people. I've never been intimidated to have smart people around me. I think that is an attribute that I have, is that I want to be around. I'm not worried somebody's going to take my job. I'm worried that I'm not going to learn from someone. That's my biggest fear, is that I'm going to go a period of time and not learn something. So I couldn't agree more. And I think our industry could use a little more humility, a few more people that just said, hey, I'm pretty good at this, but I kind of suck at this, like help.
Yeah.
And
Well,
in this environment, I think that's going to be really key, that, people can, maybe out by the hammocks or by the campfire, somebody can say, what keeps me up at night like this? I've never figured this out. And that's kind of what I'm hoping for in this experience.
Yeah, it's funny because I always call some of those people having skinny legs, because they're just working on getting like huge biceps. They're cruising the Jersey Shore with their tribal tattoo, but they got little tiny calf muscles, like but I appreciate that, and so much of what Joe and I and everybody who's been helping out, and Danny included, like, is bringing diversity to a conference in a way where it's just not about diversity of people, but it's diversity of experience, it's diversity of backgrounds. It's diversity of markets, which is an important thing. And I think that's, over the years, one of the things that I've learned, that I feel like that we can add to that, is to try to bring those extra perspectives to make everybody stronger. Outside of seeing people with their skinny calves hanging out, Danny, what's got you excited about summer camp?
Well, I think mainly because it's really different and it's really original. We've all been to conferences, and I've been to my share. You and I both, between us, we've been to a ton. But when you really think about this standard automotive conference, whether they be something as big as NADA or Digital Dealer or some of these other, they're all great. And I'm telling you, I am who I am because I've learned from those as well as the experience. But they're predictable. I can make a checklist today about what's going to happen at the next conference, and we will be able to check every box. And so we know it's the workshops, and really they're kind of touch and go experiences. So we can go in, we can watch a workshop, we can learn, but then they're off and they're gone, and then we get lost in a sea of people. And it's just these really like quick hit things. I don't retain as much that way. I will remember a few highlights. I'll make some notes. That's great. But it seems fairly impersonal, and when you guys told me about this, I thought, oh my gosh, now we can really spend some more time. We can not only look at that initial conversation, because really most of the time the value in those happen beyond the initial conversation. So sometimes that opportunity to learn lies right beyond what you thought was the opportunity to learn. So you have to take those steps. And so in this environment, as it was when I went to summer camp when I was a kid, the thing I remember from these camps when I went may not have been specifically the bouncy thing or the zip line or the sack races. I remember the relationships that I formed. I remember those people that I met that were from different walks because they were always from all over the country. Whereas here, there's going to be people from all kind of different volumes and different OEMs, different manufacturers, different philosophies on the right way to sell a car. So you get that mix, that cultural mix, that diversity, as you referred to in this setting. And it's casual and it's laid back and you can be yourself. And we're going to be in t-shirts and floppy hats and cooking s'mores. And I just feel like that environment is more conducive to really sticky learning, things that we can learn. And not only that, get to that next level where we start talking about just not what we're doing and how those processes work, but how it affects us personally, maybe personally in our career progressions or maybe our families and work-life balance. Like, I just feel like it's going to be more intimate. And honestly, I'm going to be able to act up a lot more. So I don't think the standards are going to be as high. So I'm going to let loose a little bit more.
Well,
Which,
and we
I don't mind doing that.
Yeah. Well, and that's a big part of it too, is that I feel like when we go to conferences, a lot of times, like, you almost got to pretend a little bit, and I think
a little bit, right?
You and I have been there in terms of speaking to being a vendor to, the whole sort of gamut of different roles. But one of the things for me, maybe it's just my subconscious Midwesterner inside of me, but like, I just want to show up somewhere and learn. I don't want to worry about like having to wear the right jacket or have the most expensive pair of shoes on I own or, trying to keep up with the Joneses. And I find that, a lot of people, like, that's a barrier for them. They don't want to have to, pretend to learn or try to do that. It gets them outside their comfort zone. And listen, if you want to wear high heels, Danny, you can, but at the campground, like, we're
only on the weekends.
Only weekends. So, hey, you should run for Congress.
Hey, okay.
Talk about the time you worked at NASA and the time, but no, seriously, like, we want to be a really casual environment where people can just focus on learning, but, we're very, very intentional, like we said, about everything. And part of that summer camp is nostalgia, but I'm nostalgia for my first conference experiences where everything was self-contained. It wasn't about going off to Gordon Ramsay Steakhouse or some, Hell's Kitchen type thing or whatever, where there's a vendor's going to wine and dine you and all those things that happen now. And that's all fine and good. But like, I truly do miss just, you leave the conference, everybody's at the bar or whatever. And like, you're hanging out with your peers, you're hanging out with the speakers, you're hanging out with the organizers. And everybody's, sharing stories, but also it's like they're sharing their experience and different tactics and different strategies have been successful for them. And that's really where we can have those things where, ambulance, it's always something. But in any event, like, it's one of those things where we have that opportunity to really open up there and actually compare notes. And this is really where I think we have those opportunities for the smaller market dealerships to go, hey, like, this works well for me at my mid-market, Ford store in the middle of Wichita. That's a lot closer to a mid-market Ford dealership in Oklahoma or Iowa or Nebraska or whatever. So it's not just the Longos and Galpins and places like that we're learning from, or the Lithias. It's really everyone. And we're really hoping to build that sort of fabric, and having guys like Danny there and other folks they're going to be a counselor. They have that same, what I call cross-functional knowledge, just to use a business school word. But
I'm really telling you, not to interrupt, but I'm going to tell you, some of the larger volume, these big stores can learn a lot from the mentality of these smaller volume stores. Attention to detail. Because if you can take some of that focus on the attention to detail and some of those things that you see those smaller volume stores do, and you apply that in a larger volume setting, your results are exponentially better. Like the mathematics take over. So if you can make some adjustments that we learn from different, as you say, the diverse people that we're going to have, the higher the volume. I mean, math helps you when you're making improvements, right? And Absolutely. It'll kill you when you're skipping steps. So I think not only can we learn from these people, or maybe I can share some things from that, but I think there's some things that larger volume stores do from a process standpoint that I think all of those smaller volume stores can learn from, but it works both ways. And that's when you're humble, and we, like I said, we could use a hair bit more humility in our business.
Yeah.
That if you'll just be quiet and listen, there's a lot of things to learn that'll help us personally and professionally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just to that point, the way that we've actually arranged the speakers is that it's not like a beginner or, you know, hyper advanced or something like that, but it's more geared towards like when you and I started, where we're like literally having an event stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's for those bootstrappers, the people who don't have a big team, they don't have a lot of resources around them. It's sort of got to balance it out based on what they have. And then the other sessions are geared more towards those people who do have a lot of resources, who do have. So it's not, we're not trying to like really put people in a box in terms of their experience or marketing, things of those natures, but more of like, what do you have to bring to bear? Because we want everybody to leave this conference with an action plan. You know, we want them to have something that they can go back to their dealership, and whether it's something they might learn about SEO or about culture. You know, I mean, because we're going to focus on people at this conference. I think that's something that's kind of novel, that they can actually go back to their dealership or their business and go, hey, I want to integrate this. Right. So we're super excited to have the conference and have Danny on board. Again, he's a hell of a resource, good friend of mine. And we're just super excited about the conference. Looking forward to have you there. Danny, any parting thoughts?
No, I'm ready. Again, I can't tell you much. Appreciate and how honored I am for you to ask me to be a part of it. If you and Joe are involved in something, I think you can pretty much count me in. I just love what you've given to this business, and the fact that we have the kind of friendship where we can call up and we can really talk openly about these things. That ability to talk to you in that way is showing very clearly in this project, because we're taking that kind of those relational conversations, and we're putting it in a setting that I think people are going to feel relaxed. And I'm excited again because I'm going to get to cut up a little bit. I don't have to be, all stuffy and suited up. I can go there and let my hair down and what hair I've left and have some fun. So,
dude, I always say you got the best glasses I've ever seen. So you got that going for you.
Hey, it costs money to take attention off. I was voted most likely to recede in my high school. So, well, thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure that was the one thing you were voted.
No, I wasn't valedictorian. Prize. Yeah.
So, well, if it's possible, Danny might be able to do some stand-up for us as well, because he is a stand-up comic, like legit, and hopefully might learn a little improv from him. So, thanks again for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and adios to everybody. We'll see you at camp.
Proud to be a part of it. Take care.